My hands shook as I stood before the golden gates of the Whitmore mansion, clutching the worn photograph that had haunted me for 45 years. The image showed a young woman with my eyes, my nose, my stubborn chin, holding a baby she was about to give away forever. That baby was me. Before we continue, we want to say thank you for watching Mama's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you are watching from in the comment. The rain had stopped, but my heart pounded like thunder as I pressed the intercom button. A cold voice crackled through the speaker. State your business. I swallowed hard. My name is Sarah Chin. I believe Margaret and Richard Whitmore are my biological parents. I was born December 15, 1978, and given up for adoption 3 days later. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the connection had been severed. Then the gates slowly creaked open, and I drove my 15-year-old Honda up the endless driveway, feeling like an intruder in paradise. The butler who answered the door looked at my thrift store clothes with barely concealed disgust. He led me through marble hallways lined with oil paintings worth more than most people see in a lifetime, until we reached a sitting room that screamed old money and older secrets. When Margaret Whitmore entered, I gasped. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror that showed me what I could have been with unlimited wealth and zero warmth. She wore diamonds that could fund a small country, but her green eyes, so much like mine, held nothing but ice. Richard Whitmore followed, silver-haired and imposing, radiating the kind of power that comes from never hearing the word no. They both stopped several feet away, as if my poverty might be contagious. So, Margaret said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You found us. I hired a private investigator after my husband died. I needed to know where I came from, who I am. Richard laughed, but the sound held no humor. Who you are is obvious. A middle-aged woman in discount clothing who tracked down her wealthy birth parents. Let me guess, you need money for medical bills, your mortgage, your daughter's college tuition. The accusation hit me like a slap. I have never asked anyone for money. I worked 3 jobs to put my daughter through college. I am here because I wanted to meet you, to understand why you gave me up, to see if maybe we could have some kind of relationship. A relationship, Margaret repeated, as if I had suggested we rob a bank together. After 45 years of silence, you waltz in here expecting what exactly? That we would welcome our little mistake with open arms. Mistake. The word carved itself into my chest. I am not here for money. I just wanted to know my medical history, my heritage. I wanted to see if you ever thought about me. What we thought is irrelevant, Richard snapped. We made our decision in 1978 and never looked back. We built an empire, raised our real children, created a legacy. You were a complication we handled appropriately. Real children. So, they had kept other babies, loved other children, built the family they denied me. The room spun slightly as that reality sank in. I see you had other children, I whispered. 2, Margaret said coldly. Richard IV and Patricia. Both Harvard-educated, both successful in their own right, both raised with the advantages you clearly never received. She looked me up and down like I was something unpleasant on her shoe. We can see that giving you away was the right choice. Look at you. Middle class at best, probably struggling to pay your bills, wearing clothes from some bargain basement store. You obviously did not inherit the Whitmore drive or intelligence. I am a teacher, I said, my voice growing stronger despite my pain. I teach kindergarten to children who come from difficult backgrounds. I help them learn to read, to believe in themselves, to see that their circumstances do not define their potential. How noble, Richard said with mock admiration. And what does that pay? 30,000 a year. Maybe 40. Barely enough to survive, let alone thrive. I teach because it matters, I replied. Because every child deserves someone who believes in them, who sees their worth regardless of where they come from or how much money their parents have. Margaret moved closer, and for a moment I thought she might show some maternal interest. Instead, she examined me like a scientist studying a failed experiment. You have our coloring but none of our substance, she observed. Weak chin, soft hands, probably never worked a day in your life at anything that really mattered. No wonder you ended up in such modest circumstances. The cruelty was breathtaking. I had expected rejection, even anger, but not this systematic destruction of my self-worth. These people had created me, carried me, given birth to me, and now they were dismantling my existence with surgical precision. My husband died of cancer 2 years ago, I said quietly. We spent everything we had trying to save him. I worked night shifts at a diner, weekend shifts at a grocery store, and tutored students in the evenings to pay for his treatments. I held his hand when he died, and I have been rebuilding my life piece by piece ever since. How tragic, Margaret said without a trace of sympathy. And now you are here, hoping your long-lost wealthy parents might ease your financial burden. I never mentioned money, I protested. Not once. You did not have to, Richard replied. It is written all over you. The desperation, the hope in your eyes when you looked around this room, the way you keep staring at our belongings like you are calculating their worth. That is not true, I said, but even as I spoke, I realized they had already decided who I was and why I had come. Nothing I said would change their perception. Let me be very clear, Margaret continued, her voice growing colder. We do not want a relationship with you. We do not want to know about your life, your struggles, your dead husband, or whatever pathetic existence you have cobbled together. You were a mistake we corrected 45 years ago by placing you with people more suited to your particular level of potential. Richard checked his gold watch impatiently. We have a charity gala tonight. Important people are expecting us. I suggest you leave now and do not contact us again. We have lawyers who specialize in protecting our privacy from unwanted intrusions. Unwanted intrusions. That was what I was to them. Not a daughter, not even a person. Just an intrusion to be managed and dismissed. I turned toward the door. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall in front of them. This had been a mistake, a terrible miscalculation born from years of wondering and hoping. But as I reached for the handle, the door suddenly burst open. A young woman strode in like she owned the world, which, judging by her designer clothes and confident bearing, she probably did. She had honey blonde hair that caught the light like spun gold and the kind of beauty that stopped traffic. But it was her eyes that made my breath catch. Bright green eyes that looked exactly like mine, like Margaret's, like generations of Whitmores staring back through time. Oh, she said, stopping short when she saw me. I'm sorry, I did not realize you had company. Margaret and Richard exchanged panicked glances, clearly caught off guard by this unexpected arrival. No one important, Margaret said quickly. Just someone who was leaving. But the young woman was studying my face with obvious intelligence, and I could see the moment recognition dawned in her expression. Actually, she said slowly, I think this might be exactly who I have been looking for. My heart nearly stopped as she extended her hand to me with a radiant smile. Hi, I am Emma Sterling. And unless I am very much mistaken, you are my grandmother. The room fell into absolute silence. Margaret looked like she might faint. Richard appeared to be having difficulty breathing. But Emma, this impossible young woman, was beaming at me with joy and tears in her eyes. Grandmother, I whispered, confused and overwhelmed. Emma nodded, pulling out her phone and showing me a photo of a young woman who looked startlingly familiar. This is my mother, Rebecca. She was adopted in 1978, born December 15th to parents named Margaret and Richard Whitmore. She spent her whole life wondering about her biological family, just like you probably wondered about yours. I stared at the photo, my mind reeling. The woman in the picture had my dark hair, my green eyes, my stubborn chin. She looked exactly like I had at that age. Your mother is my daughter, I breathed. Emma corrected gently, her eyes filling with tears. She died 3 years ago in a car accident. But before she died, she made me promise to find you, to find her birth parents, to piece together the family history she never got to discover. Margaret finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Rebecca. We named you Rebecca before we gave you away. Emma turned toward them, and her expression hardened into something that reminded me eerily of Margaret's coldness, though directed in the opposite direction. Yes, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. And based on what I just witnessed, giving her away was probably the best thing you ever did for her. She moved to stand beside me, linking her arm through mine in a gesture of solidarity that made my heart soar. I have been listening from the hallway for the past 10 minutes, Emma continued. I arrived early for our business meeting and heard voices in here. I wanted to understand what kind of people you were before I revealed my identity. Business meeting, Richard asked, his businessman instincts clearly overriding his personal shock. Emma smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Yes, Emma Sterling, CEO of Sterling Entertainment Corporation. We have been negotiating a distribution deal for my music catalog, remember? 5 albums, exclusive rights, merchandising partnerships. Your lawyers estimated it would be worth approximately $300 million over the next 7 years. $300 million. The number hung in the air like a golden promise, and I could see the exact moment when Margaret and Richard shifted from personal shock to business calculation. Emma, Richard said, his tone suddenly smooth and conciliatory. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Family matters can be quite emotional and complicated. Family matters, Emma repeated with a laugh that could have frozen fire. Is that what you call systematically destroying an elderly woman's self-worth? Is that how you handle family matters in the Whitmore household? She turned back to me, her expression softening instantly. Grandma Sarah, I need you to know something about the woman who raised me. My mother Rebecca was the most incredible person I ever knew. She was brilliant, compassionate, strong, and absolutely devoted to making sure I had every opportunity she never had. Emma pulled up more photos on her phone, showing me images of a life I had never known existed. Here she is at my high school graduation. She worked 2 jobs to pay for my private school education because she believed I deserved the best. Here she is at my college graduation from Juilliard. She sold her car and took the bus to work for a year to help pay my tuition. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at pictures of the daughter I had given away, watching her live a life of love and sacrifice that mirrored my own journey with my daughter Emma. Wait, I thought. Emma. Your name is Emma too, I whispered. She nodded, understanding immediately. Mom named me after her adoptive mother, Emma Williams, the woman who raised her with so much love that she wanted to honor that legacy. But she always said that if she ever found her birth mother, she would want her to know that she named her daughter after the woman who taught her what real motherhood meant. The coincidence was almost too much to bear. Both of our daughters were named Emma, both raised by women who had been given away, both shaped by the experience of growing up with adoptive families who chose to love them unconditionally. But as I stood there absorbing this miraculous connection, Margaret and Richard were clearly processing the business implications of the situation. Emma, Margaret said carefully, surely we can work through this family situation rationally. Perhaps we were a bit hasty in our initial response to Sarah. We could get to know her properly, welcome her into our family. Emma looked at her with the kind of contempt usually reserved for something scraped off a shoe. Welcome her into your family. After you spent 20 minutes telling her she was worthless, unremarkable, and a mistake you corrected by giving her away. After you suggested she was here begging for money and looking for handouts. After you made it clear that she was an unwanted intrusion in your perfect lives. She pulled a thick contract from her designer handbag, the papers crisp and official looking. This is the preliminary agreement for our business partnership, she said, holding it up. $300 million over 7 years, exclusive distribution rights, merchandising deals, touring partnerships. Your legal team spent 6 months negotiating the terms. Richard's eyes locked onto the contract like a drowning man spotting a life preserver. Emma, let us not make any rash decisions based on emotional responses to a complicated family situation. Emotional responses, Emma repeated, her voice rising with indignation. You think this is about emotions? You think I am some naive young woman who makes business decisions based on hurt feelings? She walked to the marble fireplace, her movements deliberate and theatrical. Let me tell you what this is really about. This is about character. This is about the kind of people you choose to be when you think no one important is watching. This is about whether you deserve to profit from the talent and hard work of someone whose family you just brutalized for sport. Emma, please, Margaret pleaded, her composure finally cracking. We can discuss this. We can get to know Sarah, include her in our lives. Perhaps we were too quick to judge. Too quick to judge, Emma laughed, but the sound was bitter and cold. You spent 20 minutes systematically destroying this woman's sense of self-worth. You called her unremarkable, ordinary, a mistake. You suggested she had not inherited Whitmore intelligence or drive. You mocked her career choice, her financial circumstances, her dead husband's medical bills. She held the contract higher, the papers catching the light from the crystal chandelier. You revealed exactly who you are when you thought there would be no consequences for your cruelty. You showed me that you measure human worth by bank account balances, that you believe poverty indicates moral failure, that you think love and compassion are weaknesses to be despised. Richard stepped forward, his business instincts kicking into overdrive. Emma, you are obviously upset and rightfully so. But surely we can separate business from personal matters. Your contract with Sterling Entertainment is mutually beneficial. We can provide you with resources and connections that no independent label could match. Can you? Emma asked sweetly. Because I should probably mention that Sterling Entertainment Corporation is not actually associated with your company. I am Sterling Entertainment Corporation. I own it, I built it, and I named it after my mother, Rebecca Sterling, the name she chose when she got married. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. Richard stuttered. But our company, Sterling Entertainment Group, we have been negotiating with you for months. Oh, that, Emma said with a dismissive wave. That was just me playing along with your assumption that I was some struggling artist looking for a big label to sign with. I was actually considering acquiring your company, not signing with it. I wanted to understand your business practices, your company culture, your approach to artist development before I decided whether Sterling Entertainment Corporation should absorb Sterling Entertainment Group. Margaret's face had gone completely white. You were considering acquiring us. Emma nodded cheerfully. Sterling Entertainment Corporation has a market valuation of approximately $2 billion. We represent over 40 artists, own 17 record labels, and have exclusive distribution partnerships with every major streaming platform. I was thinking your little company might make a nice regional subsidiary, something to handle our East Coast operations. She paused, letting that information sink in before continuing. But after witnessing how you treat family members, I have serious concerns about your corporate culture and leadership philosophy. Companies that succeed in the modern entertainment industry need to understand that talent comes from everywhere, that genius does not require a trust fund, and that the most commercially successful artists are often those who have overcome significant challenges. Richard was frantically calculating, probably trying to figure out how much money was slipping through their fingers with each word Emma spoke. Emma, he said desperately, surely you understand that this situation caught us off guard. We were not prepared for such an emotional encounter. Perhaps if we could start over, handle this more appropriately. Start over, Emma mused, as if considering the possibility. You mean like giving my grandmother the respect and courtesy she deserved from the moment she walked through your door? You mean like asking about her life with genuine interest instead of making cruel assumptions? You mean like acknowledging that she had the courage to seek you out after 45 years and treating that courage with the dignity it deserved? She shook her head sadly. No, I do not think we can start over. You showed me exactly who you are, and I believe people when they reveal their true nature. With that, Emma walked to the fireplace and threw the contract into the flames. The papers caught immediately, curling and blackening as $300 million literally went up in smoke. What have you done? Margaret gasped, rushing toward the fireplace as if she could somehow rescue the burning agreement. I have done what my mother taught me to do, Emma replied calmly. I have chosen my values over profit. I have decided that some things matter more than money, that integrity is not for sale, and that I will not enrich people who would treat my family with such cruelty. She turned to me, her expression softening into something beautiful and warm. Grandma Sarah, I think it is time for us to leave. We have a lot to talk about, and this house suddenly feels very small and cold. As we walked toward the door, Richard made one final desperate attempt. Emma, please reconsider. We made mistakes today, yes, but we can learn from them. We can build a relationship with Sarah, welcome her properly into our family. Emma paused in the doorway, looking back at them with something that might have been pity. "You still do not understand, do you?" she said quietly. "This was never about business deals or money or even family relationships. This was about whether you were decent human beings. And you are not." She squeezed my arm gently. "My mother spent her entire life wondering if you loved her, if you missed her, if giving her away broke your hearts the way it broke hers. She died hoping that someday she might find you and discover that you were good people who had made a difficult decision for the right reasons." The sadness in Emma's voice was heartbreaking. Instead, she would have found exactly what I found today. Two selfish, cruel people who abandoned their child because she was inconvenient, and then spent the next 45 years congratulating themselves on their good judgment. Margaret was crying now, tears ruining her perfect makeup. "Emma, please, we can change. We can be better." Emma looked at her for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her expression that might have been forgiveness, or at least understanding. "Maybe you can," she said softly. "Maybe losing $300 million will teach you something about the cost of cruelty. Maybe discovering that the granddaughter you just met is more successful than you ever dreamed will help you reconsider your assumptions about worth and potential." She opened the door, and cool evening air rushed into the stuffy room. "But it is too late for my mother, and it is too late for my grandmother. They deserved better from you, and they will get better from me." As we walked down the marble steps together, I felt like I was leaving behind more than just a house. I was leaving behind 45 years of wondering, of hoping, of building up these people in my imagination as something they never were and never could be. But I was also walking toward something I had never expected to find. Not just a granddaughter, but a connection to the daughter I had given away, a glimpse into the life she had built, the love she had known, the legacy she had created. Emma led me to a sleek black car that probably cost more than I had made in the past 5 years. But as she opened the passenger door for me, she might as well have been that little girl I had held for 3 precious days before giving her away. "Grandma," she said, and the word wrapped around my heart like a warm embrace. "I've been looking for you for 3 years. I have so much to tell you about Mom, about our family, about the life you made possible by making the hardest decision any mother could make." As we drove away from the Whitmore estate, Emma began telling me about Rebecca, about the woman my baby had become. She had been a teacher too, just like me, working with special needs children who needed extra patience and understanding. She had married a good man who loved her unconditionally, who never cared about her mysterious past or the parents who had given her away. "She sounds wonderful," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "She was," Emma agreed. "And she would have been so proud to meet you, to see that she got her strength and compassion from someone who understood what it meant to sacrifice everything for the people you love." Emma pulled into the parking lot of an upscale hotel and turned to face me. "Mom left me something for you," she said, reaching into her purse. "She always carried this, always hoped that someday she would get to give it to you in person." She handed me a small, worn jewelry box, the kind that might hold a precious keepsake. Inside was a simple gold locket, tarnished with age but obviously cherished. When I opened it, I found 2 tiny photographs, one of a baby and one of a young woman who looked exactly like me at 20. "She carried a picture of you," Emma explained. "The hospital gave her this when she was adopted, the only connection she had to you for her entire life. She used to tell me that whenever she felt lost or alone, she would look at this picture and remember that somewhere in the world was a woman who had loved her enough to make sure she had a better life." Could not speak. The locket trembled in my hands as I absorbed the magnitude of what Emma was telling me. Rebecca had carried my picture with her for her entire life, had treasured this connection to me, had loved me even though I had given her away. "There is more," Emma said gently. "Mom started a scholarship fund in your name 5 years before she died. The Sarah Williams Memorial Education Fund provides college scholarships for adopted children who want to become teachers. She always said that education was the greatest gift anyone could give, and she wanted to honor the woman who gave her life by helping other kids get the opportunities she had received. A scholarship fund in my name." I pressed the locket to my chest, overwhelmed by the knowledge that somewhere out there, young people were getting college educations because of money my daughter had set aside in my honor. Emma reached into her purse again and pulled out what appeared to be an official-looking document. "The fund currently has an endowment of $2 million, and it has provided full scholarships to 43 students so far. As Mom's heir and the fund's current administrator, I would like to ask if you would consider taking over its management. Taking over the management of a $2 million scholarship fund. The numbers were so large they seemed almost fictional to someone who had spent years worrying about monthly rent payments. Emma, I do not know anything about managing that kind of money. She smiled, the expression so like her mother's in the photographs that it took my breath away. You do not need to know about money management. That is what financial advisors are for. What you need to know is how to identify kids who have the potential to become great teachers but need help getting there. You need to know how to recognize the spark in someone who wants to dedicate their life to helping others learn and grow. She leaned closer, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Mom always said you would be the perfect person to run the fund because you understand what it means to overcome obstacles, to build a meaningful life without advantages, to choose service over profit. She wanted the scholarships to go to people like you, people who see teaching as a calling rather than just a career. As I sat in that expensive car, holding the locket my daughter had treasured and listening to Emma describe the legacy Rebecca had created in my honor, I realized that my search for family had ended in a way I never could have imagined. Not with the bitter rejection of my biological parents, but with the incredible discovery of a granddaughter I had never known existed and the knowledge that my daughter had lived a life of love, purpose, and generosity. Emma drove me to her hotel suite, a palatial space that overlooked the city lights. As we sat together on the plush sofa, she showed me photo albums, home videos, and keepsakes from Rebecca's life. I saw my daughter's wedding, her college graduation, her first day teaching, her pregnancy with Emma, birthday parties, family vacations, quiet moments at home with the people who had become her chosen family. But more than the images, Emma shared stories that painted a picture of who Rebecca had been as a person. She told me about her mother's legendary patience with difficult students, her ability to find something special in every child, her dedication to creating inclusive classrooms where everyone felt valued and supported. She was just like you, Emma said at one point, showing me a video of Rebecca reading to a group of kindergartners. Look at how gentle she is, how she makes each child feel important. That is exactly how you were with me when I was little. When you were little, I repeated, confused. Emma laughed, realizing I was still struggling to understand our connection. Grandma, I am your great-granddaughter, not your granddaughter. Rebecca was your daughter, and I am Rebecca's daughter. But I have always felt like you were more like a grandmother to me because Mom talked about you so much, wondered about you so often, that you were always part of our family story. Great-granddaughter. The relationship was even more miraculous than I had initially understood. This brilliant, successful, compassionate young woman was my legacy twice over, the daughter of the daughter I had given away, shaped by values that had somehow been passed down through generations despite the broken connections. As the evening wore on, Emma told me about her own life, her career, her plans for the future. She was not just successful, she was phenomenally successful, but in ways that honored everything I believed about using your gifts to help others. Her music carried messages of hope and resilience. Her concerts raised money for children's charities. Her business practices prioritized artist development over profit maximization. I built everything I have on the foundation Mom gave me, Emma explained. And she built her foundation on the values she inherited from you, even though she never got to meet you. Courage, compassion, dedication to helping others. The belief that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential regardless of where they start in life. She showed me her latest business venture, a music therapy program for children in hospitals and care facilities. We bring musicians to kids who are dealing with serious illnesses, disabilities, family trauma, all kinds of challenges. The program is completely free, funded entirely through my concert revenues and merchandise sales. The program served over 10,000 children the previous year, providing not just entertainment but genuine therapeutic intervention that helped kids process difficult emotions, build confidence, and maintain hope during their darkest moments. This is what success really looks like, Emma said, showing me a video of children singing along with a guitarist in a hospital ward. Not the money or the fame or the recognition, though those things are nice. Real success is using whatever gifts you have been given to make life a little better for people who need extra support. As I watched those children's faces light up with joy and wonder, I understood that the values I had tried to live by, The principles I had attempted to pass on to my own Emma had somehow found their way across generations and geographical distances to shape this remarkable young woman who was using her extraordinary success to spread hope and healing. The next morning, Emma took me to breakfast at an exclusive restaurant where she was clearly a valued regular customer. Over coffee and pastries that probably cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week, she outlined her plans for expanding the scholarship fund and involving me in its administration. But first, she said, producing another official-looking document, there are some practical matters we need to address. The fund currently provides 43 scholarships per year, but I would like to increase that to 100. To do that effectively, we need someone with educational experience to help evaluate applications, interview candidates, and make sure the money goes to students who will truly benefit from the opportunity. She slid the paper across the table. I am prepared to offer you a salary of $100,000 per year to serve as the fund's Director of Educational Outreach. The position would allow you to continue teaching if you wanted to, but it would also give you the resources to travel, to visit potential scholarship recipients, to really get to know the young people we are trying to help. $100,000 per year. The number was so far beyond anything I had ever earned that it seemed almost meaningless. But what struck me more was the title, Director of Educational Outreach, and the opportunity it represented to help young people on a scale I had never imagined possible. Emma, this is incredibly generous, but I am not sure I am qualified for this kind of responsibility. She reached across the table and took my hands, her grip warm and strong. Grandma, you are the most qualified person I know. You have spent your entire career working with children who needed extra support and encouragement. You understand what it means to overcome obstacles, to build a meaningful life without advantages, to choose service over personal gain. She pulled up the scholarship application on her tablet, showing me essays and recommendations from students who had received funding through the program. These kids need someone who understands their struggles, who can look beyond their circumstances and see their potential. They need someone who believes in the power of education to transform lives because that person has lived that transformation herself. As I read through the applications, stories of young people from foster care, from single-parent households, from communities where college seemed like an impossible dream, I saw myself reflected in their struggles and aspirations. These were my people, kids who needed someone to believe in them, to invest in their potential, to help them understand that their past did not have to determine their future. I accept, I said quietly, and Emma's face lit up with a joy so radiant it could have powered the entire restaurant. Over the next several hours, Emma walked me through the details of my new role, introduced me to the financial advisors who managed the fund's investments, and showed me the office space she had arranged for me in a building she apparently owned near my apartment. But the most meaningful part of the day came when she took me to meet some of the current scholarship recipients, young adults who were studying education at colleges throughout the city. As I listened to their stories, their dreams, their plans for the future, I understood that Rebecca had created something magnificent in my honor, a legacy that would keep giving long after we were all gone. One young woman, Maria, was studying special education with the goal of working with autistic children. She had grown up in foster care, had aged out of the system at 18 with no family support, and had been working multiple jobs while attending community college when she received her scholarship. The Rebecca Sterling Memorial Scholarship saved my life, she told me with tears in her eyes. I was about to drop out of school because I could not afford tuition and rent and food all at the same time. When I got the letter saying I had been selected, I cried for 3 hours because I finally knew I was going to make it. Another recipient, David, was studying early childhood education and planned to teach in underserved communities. He had been adopted as a baby by a single father who worked construction, and he understood firsthand how much difference one caring adult could make in a child's life. I want to be the teacher who sees potential in kids that other people overlook, he said. I want to create classrooms where every child knows they matter, where learning is joyful instead of stressful, where kids from difficult backgrounds get the same opportunities as kids from privileged families. As I listened to these remarkable young people describe their goals and aspirations, I realized that Rebecca had somehow found a way to multiply the impact of everything I had tried to accomplish in my own teaching career. Through the scholarship fund, my influence was reaching hundreds of children I would never meet, taught by educators who understood the transformative power of believing in someone's potential. That evening, as Emma and I sat in her hotel suite reviewing the scholarship program's annual report, I finally asked the question that had been weighing on my mind all day. Emma, why did you come to the Whitmore's house today? You said you had a business meeting with them, but after what happened, I am not sure I understand what you were really planning. She smiled, but there was sadness in her expression. I was not planning to reveal my identity to them at all, actually. I was going to conduct the business meeting, evaluate their character and competence, and then make a decision about whether to proceed with any kind of professional relationship. And if they had passed your evaluation, then I might have eventually told them who I was, and perhaps facilitated a meeting between you and them under more controlled circumstances. I thought maybe, if they turned out to be decent people who had matured and grown over the years, they might be worthy of knowing about the incredible daughter they had given away and the amazing great-granddaughter they had never met. But they failed spectacularly, I observed. Emma nodded, her expression hardening slightly. They revealed themselves to be exactly the kind of people who should never have been parents in the first place. Cruel, shallow, materialistic, incapable of seeing value in anything that does not directly benefit them. Mom was lucky to escape that environment, and you were lucky to escape their influence. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message thread. I have been getting calls all day from other entertainment companies who heard about what happened at the Whitmores. Word travels fast in this industry, and everyone is talking about the young CEO who walked away from a $300 million deal because her business partners insulted her grandmother. The messages were from some of the biggest names in entertainment, expressing admiration for Emma's principles and interest in working with someone who valued integrity over profit. Several offered partnership deals that were significantly more lucrative than what she had walked away from. Standing up for your family is good business, apparently, Emma said with a grin. The industry respects artists and executives who have clear values and are not afraid to act on them, even when it costs money in the short term. She scrolled through more messages, showing me offers for endorsement deals, collaboration opportunities, and speaking engagements. I have 3 interview requests from major magazines who want to do feature stories about multi-generational family businesses built on social responsibility. And 2 documentary filmmakers want to follow our scholarship program for a year. As overwhelming as all this attention was, what struck me most was how Emma handled it. She was not interested in publicity for its own sake, but she recognized the opportunity to use media attention to raise awareness about education funding, adoption issues, and the importance of supporting young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. If we do these interviews, she explained, we can reach millions of people with a message that every child has potential worth investing in, that families come in many different forms, and that success means using your advantages to lift others up rather than keeping them for yourself. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Emma introduced me to her business associates, walked me through the scholarship fund's operations, and helped me begin transitioning into my new role. She also arranged for me to meet with financial planners who helped me understand that my new salary and benefits package would provide security I had never dreamed possible. But beyond the professional opportunities and financial stability, what meant the most was the connection itself. After 45 years of wondering about my daughter, I had found not just answers but a living legacy.